So the next slogan is, of course, a very important one. The Supreme Companions. Just a minute. The Supreme Companions are mindfulness and alertness. So these two qualities go together. They support each other. And like companions, like friends, we like to travel with them everywhere so that we are not alone and unguarded. We have good friends with us. Who are these good friends? Our ability to be mindful and alert. So mindfulness, of course, has many facets, many aspects to it. It's a huge subject, actually. And the Buddha exhorted everyone to cultivate mindfulness as the path. It has many different aspects and many levels of practice. But here, essentially, it means the ability just to be present with what we are doing while we are doing, to know what we are doing, what we are thinking while we are doing and thinking it. So it's basically the quality, again, of knowing, of being aware. Because normally, during our daily life, we are running around doing so many things, and we're doing one thing and thinking something else. And so our mind and our actions are separated. Or even if we are thinking, we're not even aware of what we are thinking until we're way along the line. So it's the ability to bring our attention back to the present moment and what is happening here and now, inside us and outside of us. So, as I said this morning, the shamatha practice is essentially not just to quieten the mind, but especially to develop this quality of attention, of knowingness, this mindfulness, how to acquire the ability to be mindful, to be present with what is happening at the time of happening without comment. So shamatha helps us to develop this by narrowing the focus of our attention. So they start with, anything can be an object of meditation, but to make it as simple as possible helps. So the breath. Breath meditation is universal in all Buddhist schools as a good introduction for helping us to cultivate the ability to be aware. The breath is very useful because, first of all, we're always breathing, and we can only breathe now. We cannot breathe in the past, we cannot breathe in the future. When we breathe, we can only breathe in the present. So if we are aware of the breath as it comes in and out, we are here and now. It's a very skillful way to bring us back into the present moment, because our ego loves to live in the past, in all our memories and ideas and how it was, or in the future with all our hopes and fears and anxieties and plans, or even in the present, just going around giving its opinion and its ideas and its concepts, but never nakedly in the present, without any conceptuality about the present, just experiencing the present moment as it is. So this can be greatly enhanced through cultivating our ability to be aware. And the easiest way is through the basic shamatha practices of observing the breath as it comes in and as it leaves. So the Buddha taught many levels of mindfulness, but he starts with mindfulness of the body and mindfulness of the postures. So that when we are sitting or standing or walking, lying down, we know we are walking or sitting or whatever. This is the point. It's just that while we are doing the action, we are aware that this is what is happening. This is what the body is doing at this moment. We experience that. So especially in Theravada countries, there is this emphasis on walking meditation, where they walk very slowly and very carefully, being aware not only of the movement and the feeling on the soles of the feet, but also the intention, the mental intention, which causes the body to move. So everything is slowed down so that we can be conscious of the procedure. Normally we just do things very quickly. We're not even conscious that there is a prior intention behind it. When we slow everything down, then we can see how the process works. Like in the Chan school, there is the idea that you sweep just to sweep, you wash dishes just to wash dishes. The idea that whatever we do, if we are mindful, then that in itself is the action. It's not that we're doing something in order to get something else, but the action in itself is complete. Of course, nowadays in psychiatric psych circles and also in business circles, mindfulness has become the new buzzword. Everybody has to be mindful nowadays. There are all these courses. A weekend course in mindfulness, only $2,000. It's become the... People in Australia gave me this book, Psychiatry Today. It's one of the main psychological magazines, and the whole thing was just on mindfulness. I read in Time magazine, they had a whole page advert on a book which they had published called Mindfulness, the New Science of the Mind. America's just discovered it, so it's new. So nowadays, mindfulness is being taught in businesses, Google, Microsoft, Apple, they are all teaching mindfulness to their staff because they recognize that it helps reduce stress levels, and therefore people are more efficient and they get more out of their workers without them burning out. But anyway, they recognize it is beneficial, not only on the meditation seat, but in daily life, to learn how to give attention to what we are doing with a mind which is relaxed and present is very, very helpful. It lowers cholesterol levels and blood pressure and has all sorts of health effects, so that apart from leading to enlightenment, which is never mentioned, nonetheless, it is very, very beneficial for us as human beings. Also, mindfulness is being taught nowadays to the military and in prisons and schools. And in fact, although for 2,500 years it has been taught in Buddhist circles, it is nowadays being acknowledged that actually it is the ability to be present and aware of what is happening is very, very beneficial for the mind on all levels. You see, you're aware of sound. That's being mindful. So, as I say, the Buddha taught it basically for aspects, for applications of mindfulness, but we start with the physical because that's the easiest for us to grasp. And mindfulness of the breath is one of the aspects. During the day, we are also always breathing. If we find our minds becoming agitated or stressed, we can just stop for a few moments and bring the attention back to the breathing in and breathing out. But we can also start by just doing some very simple mindfulness exercises, such as, in the morning, brushing teeth or combing your hair or drinking your first cup of tea, whatever, to make the commitment to simply bring the mind to what we are doing without mental commentary. So, for example, if I decide, okay, I'm going to be mindful about drinking this tea, then I'm conscious of drinking the tea. And if there is commentary in my mind about whether I like it or I don't like it or what I have to do next, then we are mindful that these are the thoughts which are coming up. But as much as possible, just to keep the action very simple, very clear, what is actually happening is that we are picking up the cup and we are drinking it and tasting it. And just to know that. Because if we do that with more and more of our actions, it gives the mind a clarity and an inner relaxation. It's not stressed because it's not doing one thing and thinking a dozen other things. It's just completely present with what is happening. So mindfulness is accompanied by another mental factor. Usually everybody in English has agreed that the word for mindfulness is mindfulness. The word for smriti or trempa or whatever, that we're going to translate that as mindfulness. That more or less covers the meaning. But the next word, which in Tibetan is yeshin, nobody can agree. There isn't an exact word to cover in English. There is in Korean, of course, but in English there is no word which exactly covers this faculty. So different people translate it differently. And here it's translated as alertness. Some say introspection, clear comprehension, awareness. I mean, there are many, nobody can agree. But essentially here, when it is combined with mindfulness, it is that aspect of the mind which checks up what's going on in the mind. If the mind has become dull and is sort of sinking, it recognizes that, and then we can take on the various antidotes towards dullness. Or if the mind is very distracted, then it notes the mind is distracted and we can bring back the attention again. So basically it notes what is going on. It's not there the whole time, it just kind of comes up and looks around. And if everything is on track, everything is well balanced, subsides. If not, if we have, various agitations or dullness or whatever, then it rectifies that. So it's somebody once time said it was like a spy. It looks over and sees what's going on and then reports back and deals with the situation. It's very useful faculty of the mind that during the day we check up, what is the mind doing in this moment actually? Okay, so we should move on. But really mindfulness and its attendant alertness are very, very important mental qualities to cultivate on the path, because it's not just when we're in formal sitting, but also throughout the day we should endeavor to cultivate being more present, more aware, more mindful. It makes life much smoother. So the next is the supreme inspiration is enemies, hindrances, disease, and suffering. So again, this is a very important aspect of the Lojong or mind training teaching, which was set up by Atisha. As I said before, one of the main aspects was that we take everything which happens to us onto the path, and especially the difficulties which happen to us. Rather than seeing them as obstacles, we recognize them as opportunities. So here the English says inspiration, but the Tibetan says kulma. And kulma gives more the impression of like a whip on a racing horse. You know, something which incites you forward to keep running, you know. So it's that idea really, the idea that it's an encouragement, but in the sense of like something, you know, a whip hurts, but at the same time, it makes the horse run faster. There are many texts in the Lojong canon which deal with how to take difficulties onto the path. Enemies, obstacles and hindrances, sickness and loss and suffering. So we cannot go into this in very great detail, but it's a very important part of this tradition, which was started by Atisha, to recognize that the things which we think are our biggest obstacles to our practice, if we use them properly, could be the greatest benefit. I mean, just as an example, if we take sickness, then we normally would regard sickness as being, you know, I would practice, but right now I'm really sick. So then we can, instead of thinking of sickness as a problem, how can I use my illness as a means for practicing Dharma? Well, one of the things which is taught in these Lojong practices is a practice called Tonglen. Tong means to send out, Len means to receive in. And the basic principle is that if, as a basic principle, right, somebody is sick or suffering in some way, we imagine them or we are with them, maybe they're lying on the bed ill, or else we just think about them or we have a photo of them. And with the in-breath, as we breathe in, we visualize taking in all their sickness or all their suffering and the causes of that, the karma which caused that. We take that all into ourselves in the form of dark light. We breathe it into ourselves. It goes down into the center of the heart chakra, where we can visualize like a little black bead or pearl, which is our self-cherishing mind, this mind which thinks, I'm so sorry you're sick, but I'm glad it's not me. Right? So that by bringing in the sickness into ourselves, visualizing the dark light coming into ourselves, it diminishes and vanishes that little dark spot of self-clinging mind, which then immediately transforms into a bright diamond or a bright pearl, which is our true Buddha nature, which is never ever affected by whatever darkness or suffering we bring in. That can never be affected. So that then that dark pearl of self-cherishing turns into the bright light of our true nature. And so with the out-breath, we breathe out light and love and healing into that person. So with the in-breath, we breathe in the darkness. With the out-breath, we breathe out the light. So likewise, if we ourselves are sick, then rather than just lying there and feeling sorry for ourselves, we can, well, first of all, appreciate that this sickness is clearing away some negative bad karma. So we're not blaming others. We recognize this is only fair. I must have done something wrong in past lives. Now I'm getting this back again. So my suffering is clearing up this bad karma and I won't have to receive that again. That's the first point. But also we can practice Tonglen by visualizing that all the people in the world who are suffering the particular problem that I am suffering, then may all their suffering come onto me. I will take that suffering, and in return, I give them healing. And so we can lie there and visualize that all the suffering of all other beings combines in oneself, and in return, they are healed. How wonderful that would be. Would one wish for that? You know, that if others could be healed, I would happily take on their sickness. So in this way, again, it cultivates compassion. This Tonglen practice, by taking in the darkness, the suffering of others, that is our compassion. And by giving out the light, that is our loving kindness. So this is a way to combine these two very essential practices of compassion and loving kindness through this visualization. So this is by no means something unlikely. A parent with a very sick child would happily take on the sickness of their child if their child could be healed. I mean, this is a natural outcome of our empathy and our compassion with others. Normally, it is only kept very tightly within the family, within our children or our parents, but we are practicing to broaden and open our compassion to embrace all beings. But the Buddha said, you know, in the Metta Sutra, he said, just as a mother loves her child, her only child, thus should we cultivate loving kindness towards all beings. So we should not just think that we can practice when everything is nice, we're healthy, well-fed, everything is very pleasant, then I can practice. And when things are difficult, then I cannot practice. This is too difficult. Because in order to really grow inwardly strong, sometimes we do need challenges. I mean, the example is of we go again to the gym because our muscles are weak. Then we use these machines. The machines that they have you seen them? They're like torches. They are intended to challenge our muscles. You see people working on these machines, the sweat pouring down. Why? Because they know that the suffering which they are going through will make them stronger. That at the end they will feel better because they know that now they are becoming strengthened, that if they just lie out on couches the whole time, then we just end up, you know, flabby and in the end useless. We need challenges. We understand that with the body, but we also have to understand that on the spiritual path. So one time, just after I had left my extended retreat in India, I was down in South India, and I was with some friends, so they went to visit an astrologer. And so I asked this astrologer, should I go back into retreat again, or should I start a nunnery? So he looked, and then he said, well, go back into retreat, very pleasant, very peaceful, very good, very nice. If you start a nunnery, many problems, many difficulties, many challenges. But both are good, so you decide. So then I thought, all right, back into retreat. And then I met with a Catholic priest, and I told him what the astrologer had said. And so he said, well, of course, you start a nunnery. He said, we are like pieces of rough wood. If we always stroke ourselves with silk and velvet, that is very nice. But we do not become smooth. We need sandpaper to make us smooth. So this is the point, is that all of these enemies, hindrances, disease, and suffering are all our sandpaper to make us smooth. And if we deal with these using Dharma methods, then what appears to be difficulties turns into our best opportunities for making genuine progress on the path. We should not discriminate between pleasant and unpleasant, but we should just bring in our awareness and our alertness into all situations, and in that way they transform. What we think is the most difficult thing ends up being, when we look back on it, the most helpful thing. Because if we really understand that whatever happens to us, it's our response which is the important thing, not the situations which come to us, but how we respond to what happens to us. Then we can go beyond our hopes and fears, our anxieties and our worries, because we have that inner strength to know that whatever happens, somehow we will turn it to advantage and take it on the path. The next is that the supreme method is to be natural or uncontrived, not to be artificial. In other words, that we shouldn't try to pretend to be what we are not. That we should try to, sometimes people, when they read Buddhist texts, then it sets out the ideal of how an 8th level bodhisattva would act. And then we think, oh, I have to be like this. But we are not 8th level bodhisattvas. So to try to act like a high level bodhisattva when we are just ordinary, very frail human beings can be very stressful. And if we're not careful, it becomes very artificial. We're pretending to be who we're not. So that doesn't work. That sets up an inner tension between what we are, how we're trying to present ourselves and how we really are in reality. So therefore, it's very important to be honest. Of course, we are striving to do better. Of course, we are trying to live up to our highest potential. But nonetheless, we should do that in a very uncontrived way and not try to pretend to be who we're not. So I think that that's fairly obvious, yes? I mean, some people are always pretending to be something they're not. You meet these politicians and other people in those kind of roles, and they're presenting a facade which is not how they really are at all. And even as, Dharma practitioners, our conduct should be honest. We shouldn't pretend what we are not, while at the same time, as I say, of course, we should be trying to improve and live up to our highest potential. But at the same time, we shouldn't pretend what we are not. Yeah, so the Tibetan says Chichamepa, which literally means uncontrived or not artificial. So it was translated as natural. So that's what it means. It's that we're not being artificial, we're being truthful in our conduct. So the supreme way of benefiting is to help others enter the Dharma. Now, of course, the Buddha said that the most precious gift is the Dharma. Nothing could equal that. And so the gift of the Dharma excels all other gifts, undoubtedly. But of course, that doesn't mean that you have to then run around knocking on people's doors and putting pamphlets in their hands, or that we have to therefore go out and try to convert all our family or our neighbors. Fortunately, we don't have to do that. That's not part of being a good Buddhist. The best way to gain people's trust in the Dharma is through our conduct. People are much more likely to be impressed by how we act than by what we say. So if we ourselves show kindness, show honesty, show, that we are trying sincerely to be good people and kind people, nice people, and that we are trustworthy and so forth, this is much more a sign of the Dharma than if we merely just talk about it and try to impress people with our knowledge. So, in general, to lead a life of genuine integrity and to really try to incorporate and merge the Dharma principles into our daily life so that people can see as an example how the Dharma works in a person's life, that in itself is a gift to the world, because we are living a life which will not bring harm to others and possibly will bring great benefit to others. And without even saying a word of actual Dharma language, we can nonetheless be an example of the Dharma life well lived. In Korea, do you have the custom, as they do in China, for people to make donations for Dharma books to be published and therefore distributed for free?
Yes.
You do? Because that is also a very beautiful way of sharing the Dharma. You're not forcing it on anybody, but if someone wants to pick it up, then maybe it will completely transform their lives, not just this lifetime, but all their future lifetimes too. So the gift of Dharma truly does excel all other gifts. And I would like to mention that many people, when they are faced with hindrances and disease and suffering and loss and so forth, have often said, what will I do without the Dharma? That so many people feel at that time when they have so much suffering, that is when the Dharma really has become their great refuge and inspiration. So anything that we can do to share that with others, if they are willing to hear, then that is a great blessing. As I say, not just for this lifetime, but perhaps for many, many future lifetimes also. Any other gift is only transitory. No matter what we do for somebody else, it will only benefit this lifetime. But the gift of Dharma will be for all our lives until enlightenment. I was just thinking about books. So when I left school and I joined a library, and one time I was about to leave to go to on a tour of Europe with my mother and my brother. And at the last minute on a Saturday evening, somebody brought in a small book called The Mind Unshaken. And I liked the title so much that I picked it up to take with me on my tour. And eventually I got around to reading the book. I thought it would be too difficult, but actually it was very simple. But it was on the Noble Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths, the Three Signs of Being, very basic Buddhism written by a journalist, an English journalist who had lived in Thailand. But that book, small as it was, completely transformed my life. I mean, that's why I'm here now. It's because of that book. And so this is the point, that just even a very simple thing, I mean, it wasn't given for free, it was a library, but reading that book completely changed my life. And so the gift of Dharma is an extraordinary thing. We never know what may be the repercussions of having books on the Buddhism available for people to pick up and read. It can really, really be totally mind-altering and life-altering. So the last one is the supreme benefit is a mind that turns towards the Dharma. So you are born in what was traditionally a Buddhist country. But just because one is born in a Buddhist country does not mean that the mind will necessarily turn to the Dharma. I mean, I know myself living in India, you know, many Tibetans now, they are in India, but the young people, they have faith in the Dalai Lama and they have faith in the Lamas in general, but their mind does not turn to the Dharma. Nowadays, very few young Tibetans in exile are becoming monks and nuns. They are not interested. For them, the Western Pure Land is New York. That's where they're dreaming of. That's where they're aspiring to. Their minds have not turned. And so we can be saturated in a Buddhist culture, and yet it does not merge with our heart. So the most important thing that can happen, that can really benefit us in our life, is for our mind to merge with the Dharma, turn to the Dharma, have interest and faith in the Dharma, so that whatever we do becomes a practice for us. Then that is the greatest benefit we can possibly give to ourselves and in time to others also. If our mind does not turn to the Dharma, everything else we do, even if it looks like a Dharma activity, isn't really. It's just culture. The important thing is that our heart should turn towards the Dharma.